Have you ever wondered why the world turned its back on you? Why did they smirk behind closed doors and whisper your name like a curse? It's not 'cause you were weak. No. No, it's not 'cause you weren't enough. It's 'cause your DNA, your very blueprint, screamed different. And this world, this plastic paper-thin society that worships masks and hides behind fake smiles, it can't handle different. They want predictable, controllable, repeatable. But you walked in like a storm no one forecasted. You shattered expectations without even trying, and that terrified them. You were never built for the ordinary 9-to-5, coffee-sipping, dream-killing routine. You were built to rise, break patterns, and leave ashes where others left footprints. And instead of celebrating you, they tried to cage you. Because freedom in a soul like yours, that's dangerous. They made you question yourself. Clever trick. They didn't even need to beat you down with fists. Just silence, neglect, exclusion. They taught you how to doubt your voice, how to shrink in rooms you were meant to dominate. And you let it happen, didn't you? You let them teach you shame. You wore it like a coat, thinking maybe if you bend a little more, softened the edges, laughed a little quieter, maybe, just maybe, they'd let you in. But they never intended to. No matter how many times you folded, they were never going to accept a flame in a room full of paper dolls. They weren't rejecting you. They were rejecting the fire you carry. The kind that exposes their lives. Burnt down illusion. Now you sit here thinking you're broken, when the truth is you've just been surrounded by cowards too long. Let me tell you something. You were never made to be liked. You were made to be respected. There's a difference. Liked is soft, like bends to fit in. But respected, that takes pain. That takes standing when everything in you screams to fall. And you've tasted that, haven't you? The sting of betrayal, the slap of being misunderstood. It carves you, chisels you, and it hurts, yeah. But it also sharpens you, cuts the fat, leaves only the bone, the core. And that's where the real strength is. You were never meant to be everyone's favorite chapter. You were written to be the plot twist they never saw coming. You want to know why they backstabbed you? Why did they ghost you? Lie and play you? 'Cause you reflected the truth they didn't want to face. You showed them how weak they were. They saw your discipline, your hunger, your scars, and it made them sick. Not 'cause you hurt them, because you reminded them of what they could have been if they weren't so damn soft. So they attacked. Cowards always do. They turn the volume up on your mistakes, 'cause it drowns out their mediocrity. But listen closely. Those same people, they're watching now from the shadows, praying you fall again. Not 'cause they hate you, but because your rise makes them feel small. And that's your power. Every step forward you take is a war cry against every silent wish they made for your failure. So what now, huh? You gonna keep crying over closed doors? Doors you outgrew? Doors that led to rooms too small for your vision? Or are you going to build your own house, brick by bloody brick, and watch as they come begging for a tour? You've got to flip the script. No more apologies. No more playing small. No more letting their opinions rent space in your head. You owe them nothing, not your time, not your energy, not even an explanation. Just results. Cold, ruthless, unapologetic results. You don't need their permission to be who you were born to be. They don't get to rewrite your story. You do. They called you difficult, didn't they? Too intense, too much. Said you were hard to love, or too deep, or too angry. But let me ask you, what kind of fool thinks a fire was ever meant to be hugged? You were made to burn, not to be held. And people like you come with thunder in your voice and earthquakes in your silence. You were never designed for small talk or surface-level connections. That's why they never understood you. Because you felt everything. Too loud, too raw, too real. While they numbed their lives with routine and lies, you were busy wrestling demons in your damn mind. And still showing up for people who wouldn't bleed for you if roles reversed, and they called you the problem. The unlovable one. As if your passion was a defect instead of proof that your soul was still alive in a world full of walking corpses. But you kept giving, didn't you? You kept lowering your frequency to match theirs. You kept showing up with full hands to tables where they never even brought a spoon. You stayed when you should have walked. You helped when they wouldn't have even noticed if you had drowned. And now you sit there wondering if you are the fool. You weren't. Let me make that clear. You weren't a fool. You were loyal. You weren't weak. You were hopeful. You weren't blind. You just wanted to believe there was more good left in people than there was. And that's not your shame. That's your strength. But strength gets tired too. And you're allowed to be tired. But don't you dare let that fatigue convince you that you were wrong for being real in a world that rewards fake. Have you ever noticed how the loudest ones, the flashiest, the ones who need all the eyes on them, disappear when life gets ugly? That's not a coincidence. That's survival instinct. They were never built for the shadows. But you were born in them, raised by the silence. You grew through isolation like weeds through concrete. And every time someone thought they'd buried you, they didn't realize they were planting something they could never kill. You endured in places they couldn't even breathe in. And now here you are, still standing. Scarred, sure. Bleeding, maybe. But standing. And that's everything. That's power. Not the kind that needs validation, but the kind that speaks through presence, through unshaken calm, through eyes that have seen hell and refuse to bow. They'll say you changed. Of course they will. That's what cowards say when they lose access to the version of you they could manipulate. They'll say you got cold, got distant, got quiet. But silence isn't weakness. It's evolution. You're not the same person who tolerated crumbs and begged for scraps. You're not the same heart that ignored red flags just to feel loved, no. You're sharper now. Colder, maybe, but not broken. You're calculating, aware, and that scares them, because a version of you that knows its worth, that's the final form. That's the version that doesn't need closure, doesn't need revenge, doesn't need anyone to clap for them. That version just builds, quietly, brutally, unapologetically. And let me tell you something they don't want you to hear. You were always the threat. Not because you meant harm, but because you carried truth. And the truth is a knife in a room full of lies. That's why they rejected you. That's why they sabotaged you. Because they knew deep down you saw through them. You saw the cracks in their masks, the hollowness behind their smiles, the desperation in their need to be accepted. And that terrified them. People don't fear monsters, they fear mirrors. And you were one. So now what? Are you going to keep hiding your fire just to make cold people comfortable? Or are you finally going to burn? Not to destroy, but to illuminate. To light the way for the next version of you. To remind the world that some souls can't be caged, can't be silenced, can't be tamed. Let them talk. Let them twist your name into poison in rooms you'll never enter. Because while they're gossiping, you're grinding. While they're watching, you're working. While they're plotting, you're evolving. And one day they'll look up and realize the storm they feared, the one they tried to stop, dilute, mock. It didn't just arrive. It became the weather. And let me tell you something else. Something they'll never admit. They feel your absence. Even the ones who never had the guts to say your name. Even the ones who act like they've moved on. They feel that void you left. Because when someone like you leaves, it's not just silence that fills the space. It's the echo of what they'll never find again. It's the standard you set, the depth you brought, the realness you offered. They can go through 100 people, 1,000 conversations and still feel that emptiness where you used to be. Because people like you don't come around often. You don't replace a soul forged in fire with someone built out of glass. It doesn't work like that. And when they realize that, it's too late. You've already turned that pain into focus, into discipline, into silence so heavy it makes them choke on the memory of what they lost. But don't let that satisfy you. Not entirely. Don't stop at the idea that your absence is punishment enough. No. Go further. Let your progress haunt them. Let your silence be the soundtrack to their regret. Build a life so focused, so heavy with meaning, that they can't speak your name without tasting dust. Let your glow be the proof that they were in the darkness. Every win you achieve, every quiet step forward, you make them feel smaller. Not out of spite, but because your existence alone is proof that their betrayal didn't break you. That's the greatest revenge. Not rage, not arguments. Peace. That's untouchable, bulletproof, I don't care anymore. Kind of peace that leaves them screaming in the quiet. That's when you know you've won. When your silence is louder than their noise. When your growth blinds them more than your presence ever could. And this time, no more warnings, no more emotional speeches, no more begging people to meet you halfway. If they can't handle your standards, your ambition, your intensity, let them choke on mediocrity. You were never born to fit in. You were born to lead. You were born to intimidate the weak, to challenge the fake, to make the world uncomfortable, just by existing. And if that makes you hard to love, so be it. You'd rather be alone with your truth than surrounded by cowards who applaud your downfall. This is your era now. No more waiting. No more hoping. No more wasting time explaining your worth. They had their chance, and now they just get to watch. And while they watch, let them stew in that silence they never thought would last. Let them sit in the aftermath of what they took for granted while you carve your path without a word. Because here's the truth. Most people can't stomach. Some losses are permanent. Some betrayals don't get second chances. Some versions of you, once gone, never come back. You've evolved. You've outgrown that naive heart that used to see the good in everyone. That heart got shattered one too many times, and in its place grew something sharper. Something that doesn't bleed for just anyone. You've learned how to keep your soul close and your circle small. You don't offer yourself freely anymore. No, that's not bitterness. It's wisdom. It's experience turned into armor. Because now you know that not everyone who smiles is sincere. And not everyone who stays deserves to. And the ones who said you changed, of course you did. Pain changes people, loyalty does too. Especially when it's met with silence. You used to show up with your whole heart, thinking maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd choose you back. But all you got was half love, temporary energy, and words that never matched actions. So you stopped hoping. You stopped showing up for those who wouldn't walk half the road for you. That was the lesson, wasn't it? That love isn't just about giving. It's about mirroring. And you were doing all the giving, all the fighting, all the carrying. Now, you match energy. Now you measure intention. Now you read silence louder than speeches. That's growth. That's maturity. That's survival. You don't even get mad anymore. Not really. You just got done. Done explaining yourself. Done trying to prove your heart. Done breaking your peace to accommodate people who would have left you bleeding in a heartbeat. You've seen too much, felt too much, and been left too many times, and now your standards aren't negotiable. Your peace isn't for sale. You're not desperate for connection. You're selective, and that makes people uncomfortable, because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't need them. You're not craving attention. You're craving alignment. You don't want more people. You want the right people, real ones. People who don't flinch at your darkness, who don't panic when you go silent, who don't disappear when you stop giving. That's the Bob now. And if they can't reach it, they don't belong near you. But let's be real. This path you're on, it's not for everyone. It's lonely. It's brutal. It demands things from you that most people never have to give. It requires discipline when the world offers distractions. It requires resilience when everyone else folds. You don't get the luxury of softness. Not yet. Not while you're still building. Not while your name is still being whispered in rooms by people waiting to see you fall. And that's fine. You don't need comfort. You need purpose. You need fire. You need silence and solitude and scars that remind you why you started. This isn't about being understood anymore. It's about being undeniable, about walking into a room and letting your presence do what your words used to beg for. And when they ask you how you did it, when they finally realize that you became everything they swore you couldn't without them, don't explain. Don't soften your edge to make them feel better about the version of you they never supported. Just smile, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Because now you see everything for what it is. You see who's real, who's loyal, who's temporary, and more importantly, you see yourself. No more illusions, no more waiting to be picked. You are the table now, the room, the storm. And if they can't handle that, let them drown in the mediocrity they chose over you. You were never meant to be ordinary. Your DNA was never built for that. You ever notice how the world only respects you once you stop giving a damn? Once you go silent? Once you stop showing up with that heart wide open? Once you start saying no without explaining? That's when they start watching. That's when the whispers start. He's different now. He changed. No, you didn't change. You woke up. You realized that love without respect is manipulation. That loyalty without reciprocity is slavery. That constantly proving yourself to people who have already made up their minds is a dead man's game. You got tired of being the one who always understood, always forgave, always bent until your spine cracked. And when you stood up straight, taller, colder, sharper, they called you cruel. But they don't know what it took to get here. They didn't see the nights you swallowed your screams just to keep the peace. They didn't see the war you fought just to keep your soul intact. But now it's different. You walk differently. You move with silence. You don't rush to reply. You don't chase closure. You don't need apologies. You read patterns. You see intentions and delays. You hear the truth in silence. You learned how to protect your energy like a soldier guards the last bullet in a war he refuses to lose. And that scares them. Because when someone like you goes quiet, it means decisions are being made. It means chapters are closing and bridges are burning without a single word. And the best part, you don't even hate them. You just outgrew them. You leveled up, and they stayed where comfort and cowardice feel like home. You stopped begging for a seat at that table because you realized you built the table. You stopped asking to be loved right? Because you started loving yourself with a ruthlessness no one else could match. And they'll say, you've become heartless. No, you've become selective. You've learned that your love is a luxury, not a default. That your presence is a privilege, not a charity. You've learned how to leave, not angrily, not bitterly, but completely. Without announcements, without explanations. You just disappear and let the echo of your absence remind them who you were. And oh, it will remind them. Because once someone's tasted real, fake never hits the same again. They'll go looking for what you gave them in people who can't even pronounce loyalty, let alone practice it. And every time they settle for less, they'll think of you. Not out of love, out of regret, out of knowing they had something rare and ruined it, out of ego and fear. But you don't look back. You don't chase. You don't correct their version of the story. You let them lie. Let them paint you as the villain, because villains sleep better than fools. You'd rather be misunderstood and at peace than adored and broken. This is your season of silence, of focus, of revenge through rebuilding. You don't post your pain anymore. You let your glow do the talking. You let your progress haunt the ones who hoped you'd fail, and you let God handle the rest. Because nothing hits harder than a person who came back from hell with their fire still burning. You don't owe anyone the soft version of yourself anymore. You don't owe anyone the unguarded you, the one who gave too much, too fast, to people who couldn't even spell commitment. That version of you died. And in its place stands someone with boundaries made of steel and eyes that see through everything. You're not bitter. You're awakened. You're not angry. You're aware. And you're not alone. You've just learned how to enjoy your own company more than the noise of temporary people. That's what growth looks like. That's what evolution sounds like. And now you walk forward. Not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you've turned it into purpose. And the thing is, you were always meant to walk alone for a while. Not because you're unworthy of love or friendship, but because your path is sacred. And not everyone's feet are built for this terrain. You're climbing mountains that most people can't even see. And the higher you go, the quieter it gets. That silence. That's not loneliness. It's elevation. It's clarity. It's God, separating you from distractions, pulling you away from those who'd rather see you break than bloom. See, you had to lose them. You had to outgrow those old attachments. You had to stop watering dead roots, hoping they'd sprout. Because you're not who you used to be. You're not begging for love. You're not proving your worth. You're not giving yourself to people who wouldn't even flinch if they saw you fall. You're not afraid to be misunderstood anymore. That fear died when you realized most people don't listen to understand anyway. They listen to respond, to judge, to twist. So let them. Let them believe what they want. That doesn't stop your growth. That doesn't slow your grind. Because while they're busy talking, you're building. Quietly, strategically, unapologetic. And there's a power in that silence they'll never comprehend. A storm that brews in your stillness. You've mastered the art of not reacting. And that drives them mad. They poke, hoping to find the old you. The one who explained too much, forgave too quickly, and gave too freely. But that version doesn't live here anymore. You buried him beneath every lie, every betrayal, every time someone made you feel like too much when you were just too real. Now, everything you do is intentional. Every move calculated. You're not running on emotion anymore. You're running on discipline. They don't see the work you put in. The nights you stay up grinding in silence. The way you bleed for your goals while they scroll and waste. You've become addicted to progress, obsessed with evolution. Not for revenge, not anymore, but for legacy. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's really about, isn't it? Leaving something behind that can't be erased. A name, a presence, a standard. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying to make sure no one forgets you ever existed. That's the kind of hunger that can't be faked. That's the kind of mindset that separates kings from clowns. And when the noise gets loud, because it will, don't flinch. Don't shrink. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them obsess. Because while they speculate, you're executing. You're moving in silence, stacking wins, sharpening your soul. You're not competing with anyone. You're competing with the man in the mirror. And every day, you're making him stronger, sharper, colder, wiser. That's the game now. You don't play by their rules. You make the rules. You set the tone. And anyone who can't match your energy gets left behind. No guilt, no explanations, just distance. That's your power now. The ability to detach, to walk away, to disappear without warning, and let your absence speak volumes. Because the truth is, you were never too much. You were just never meant for small places. Your mind was never ordinary. Your heart was never replaceable. Your vision never meant to be understood by those with no imagination. So stop asking for understanding. Stop watering deserts. Stop handing loyalty to people who wouldn't flinch if you were drowning. And start owning what you are. Your fire, your truth. You're the silence that follows a storm, and the chaos that comes before change. And if they couldn't handle you, that's their weakness, not yours.